Welcome back to the show. Now, we can't thank the pandemic for many things, but it did give the world the wonderful poems of our next guest.
Yes, during lockdown, she discovered she could sum up the many heartfelt emotions, experiences and realities of life in her very clever rhymes. Let's welcome back to the sixth sofa, Jan Brierton.
Hi,
Good to see you, Jan. Brierton. I think we...
We're friends.
Whatever.
Call me Jan.
It's not your first time, so we'll call you, yeah, exactly.
Listen, you were a poet and you didn't even know it. I know it's an old one. Sorry about it.
That's all right.
But suddenly during lockdown, though, these poems start flowing out of you. So was this something you were doing as a child, or where did it come from?
Yeah, I still don't really know where it came from. And loads of people say to me, "Oh my God, were you always into poetry?" And I was never into poetry.
No.
I didn't particularly enjoy it in school, and it never really made any sense to me. But what I did always do was I always bought smash hits.
All right.
Yeah. And I loved the posters, but I also loved, when they'd have all the lyrics for all the songs.
I lived for the lyrics, yes.
Yeah, and I kind of have come to realise maybe that was my poetry in a way. And I suppose it makes sense because all of my poems are really short and they all rhyme, and they're like little pop songs in a way.
So you could put them to music.
Well, God, I don't know.
That
might be next.
That might be after Christmas.
I just have to say as well, sorry, the 6 o'clock show has been like my top of the pops as well, because you have had me on, this is my third time now. Like, there is not another TV show where a poet can come and read their poems. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So thanks.
But the reason it works and the reason you can be on a show like this at 6 o'clock is because you are so accessible. Your words are so accessible. And by saying they're like pop songs, like, it's such a perfect analogy because they can be popular. You don't feel, and like, I was a student of English literature, like, I've read all the highfalutin stuff, and yet I never wanted to go back to that. But what you do is so accessible. You're writing about the everyday, be it friendships, your kids, whatever it is, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have the emotional weight. So how have you managed to do that? Like I was telling you, I was in tears coming to the studio because I'd read some of your poems. So, like, how do you do that it's so accessible and yet you make that emotional impact?
God, I don't know.
That was the longest question ever. Apologies, Jan. Sorry, I'm losing myself here. But how do you manage that?
I call it catchphrase poetry. It's kind of like I just say what I see. I kind of only write about what I know. So often it's about parenting and frustration and drinking wine and wearing leggings and all those things. But also it's about loss and love. And, I wrote a poem for my daughter. She was 13 and that resonated with loads of people,
that got me as well,
and it's that idea of, loving her, but also kind of like, it's bittersweet. So, yeah, I suppose I just write about what I know and it rhymes. Sometimes they're a little bit longer, but, yeah, it's been lovely because it means lots of people can kind of go, oh, me too.
Yeah, that's exactly. And because you're writing about your own personal experience, you ever get nervous going, oof, this is very raw, like, this is really me. Do you ever get nervous about unleashing it then, your poetry, on your Instagram or with your podcast or the book?
Yeah, I suppose, I get nervous after I've put it out there, which is the wrong time to get nervous, isn't it? It's like, oh God, what should I just do? No, look, I think we probably have more in common than we have in, differences. So it's kind of nice to put it out
actually,
there.
if you filter yourself, then it's game over. It won't work then.
Yeah. And even like with the podcast like that as well, I'm just having real conversations with people. There happens to be a microphone recording it all, but, and we're talking about, kind of real life and stuff. And sometimes it's gotten out there and it's out before I can kind of go, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. You know what I mean? But no, I kind of try not to filter myself too much.
Okay. Do the poems set the tone with the guests for the podcast?
Yeah, that's a good question, because sometimes I have had a poem and I've gone, so Maya Dunphy was in, for example, and we spoke about grief because her mum had passed away kind of quite soon after she'd been into me, and I'd lost my mother-in-law quite closely as well to that time. But then we also spoke about like all the different roles that kind of women have. So I picked poems I thought that that we could share together. Mm-hmm. But for example, today I was in the studio and I've had a week of it this week, and I read a poem called No Response is a Response, because I just had a week of emailing people and no one was getting back to me. So my guest today, when I recorded, I was like, let's talk about this, you know what I mean?
Right.
So look, I don't really know what I'm doing, Martin. So, like, I just kind of pick and choose. I'm getting away with it. Oh, thanks.
That's what we're all
I'm
doing
enjoying
in life.
It, though. Yeah.
Is it always well-known people that you're speaking to in the podcast?
I have some well-known people. you know, people like, so Maya Dunphy was in. I'm speaking to Andrew Fitzsimons, I think is the next episode. He's the Kardashians' hairdresser. But then I also had, like, Grace Moore is in this episode, and Grace wouldn't be kind of as widely known. I have an amazing woman called Martina Keegan who got in touch with me. She read one of my poems on Instagram, like you, or she heard me on the radio and was like, oh my God, that really resonated with me. And she came in, she had had the most incredible lockdown experience. She was just so generous and shared her personal experience with me.
Well,
we
what
read
had happened
poems
to her
together
during
and stuff.
lockdown?
She had lost her husband, and she's a young woman and with 2 young kids.
Oh, God,
but she was just so open and so generous and so frank. And she also wrote poems as well, and her husband had written poems too. So, do you know, there's a mixture of, you know, what I'm saying, kind of well-known people and normal people, you know, with kind of extraordinary kind of stories. And people who are just willing to kind of, you know, share.
Yeah. Well, I think it's your rawness and honesty that makes them feel comfortable to do that. So it's you know.
I should have been a priest in a confession box, shouldn't I?
Well, maybe that's take the podcast to the confession box.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No. Has there been a guest where you've chatted with them and they have, or the conversation has inspired you to go and write a poem?
Ooh, well, I wrote a poem for Grace Moore yesterday. She's like a lifelong friend of mine, and I called it Grace Under Pressure. It's like 4 lines,
Lovely.
you know. So yeah, she inspired me. I do ask every guest when they come on, if I was to write a poem about you, what would be the theme or what would be the title? And it stumps them a little bit because they kind of go, oh, Jesus, you know, what am I today or whatever. Grace has inspired me to write that one poem yesterday. Nobody else yet, Martin.
Okay.
But you know, that's not to say they haven't given me kind
What
of
would you write
inspiration.
about Martin King?
Handsome. What rhymes with handsome? Funny. Yeah. I'll write one for you if you want. I'll send it on.
Let's talk about the day job. That's how I would have come across you originally. I would have seen your name credited on these amazing photo shoots. You're a fashion stylist. We've been talking a lot here about sustainability. We've been supporting Climate Action Week and trying to keep the conversation going. Obviously, here I am with the long story again. I'm so sorry, the longest questions tonight. But have you, as a stylist, noticed that sway into fashion, trying to be more sustainable? Are you working with clients or people or models or celebrities who are like, actually, I want to make more conscious choices when it comes to what we're working with, the pieces we're working with, the lines that we're working with?
Yeah. It's quite conflicting when you work in fashion. You're kind of all about encouraging people to buy more and very often things that they don't need fundamentally. But yeah, like, it's lovely. A lot of the brands that we work with, you can see that they're just a bit more mindful. You know, they're definitely kind of introducing more sustainable kind of like products into their ranges. But I would deal a lot with a lot of the models, the photographers and the creative people. I'd interact with those people a lot. And what I am seeing, which is so nice, is, you know, the models are all arriving and they're in these, you know, little second-hand bits that they're getting from like vintage shops or from charity shops and stuff. And they're proudly kind of telling you that it's like the days of the model kind of swishing in and wearing like magnificent, you know, like super brands or whatever. You know, they're kind of gone. You know, that there's a proudness in actually, you know, being more mindful in kind of how you're consuming fashion. So
brilliant.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's moving in the right direction for sure. We can't have you here without hearing a poem from you. So will you read us something?
I will. Yeah, I'm going to read you a Midterm Breakdown because we're nearly at the midterm.
Perfect.
And I actually wrote this last midterm, so it was during coming into the summer midterm, but it still applies, you know. So here we go, Midterm Breakdown. At last, put those bloody books away. Leave the telly on all day. Don't make the bed. Leave it messed. Don't clean your teeth or bother to get dressed. Send them out the back to play. Hide the dirty clothes away. Pull the blinds so you can't see the mucky floors, the cup stained with tea. Stay up really late. Drink all the gin. Don't set your alarm for an early dawn swim. It'll be easier now the weather is warmer. Eat on the couch, stuff your face with the korma. Have a good cry when no one's around. Go on, it's Midterm Breakdown.
That's brilliant.
That is so good. Just completely described my house next week. Thank you so much. That is brilliant. I will be drinking all the gin and anything else that's open. So nice to see you. You're going to stay with us for the rest of the show. That was brilliant. So much fun.
Great to see you again. It really is.
All right, coming up next, we're going to catch up with 2FM DJ Tracy Clifford.
That's on the way very soon. We'll see you back here after the break.